We are back to section 2.6, and this is the last question which we were supposed to do. So I hope you guys were able to figure out something, but I will explain in detail in a few minutes. There is a negative sign with the x that is going to cause a little bit of confusion or trouble. So hold on. So, but before I do that problem, I have to tell you something about the previous one. So once we get the graph which we have here in the third problem here, so this green color graph is the final graph or final answer, and this equation is 1 plus square root of x plus 2. Okay, so this is our function, graph of the function. Now notice that this graph is crossing the y-axis, but it will never cross the x-axis. As you can see, it's starting at point -2, 1. So it's going to go up, 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 so never coming back to cross the x-axis. So now what we do, we should be able to figure out what the y-intercept is. And whenever a graph crosses a y-axis and the x-axis or one of them, both, if they are the graph is crossing both axes, you should try to find the intercept of x intercept and the y intercept, and whichever axis they are crossing, you should algebraically find that. So our equation can be written like this: y is equal to 1 plus square root of x. Now for finding the y intercept, I will set x is equal to 0, and I get y is equal to basically 1 plus square root of 2. Now what is square root of 2? The value is about 1.414 roughly. This is square root of 2, and then I have one more, so 1 plus 1.414, so I get a value 2.414. We can think of it as just 2.4 for graphing purposes. And if you go to the graph, you note this is actually the point, and this is about 2.4, which is correct. Okay, now your question could also be that write down the domain of the function. So from the graph, you can see it's starting at x is equal to -2 and going up to infinity. So you can say that the domain is -2 to infinity. And the range again from the point up, so it will be 1 to infinity. Now domain can also be found from the given equation. So remember, what is the rule for the square roots? That we cannot have negative number under the square roots. What we do, we take the quantity inside the square root and set it greater than or equal to 0. And so we get x is greater than or equal to -2. And in interval notation, this is -2 to infinity. So that is what our domain is over here. And the range. So this is a closed interval here, and the other one is an open interval. Okay, now we come to the last problem. So note here that this, I can rewrite my equation for the function, or the expression for the function. It's given to us as 1 minus square root of 3 minus x. So I'm going to move the 1 at the end. So I can write negative of square root of 3 minus x is equal plus 1. Okay. So g of x can also be written as, there was a 1 here, we put it at the end, so 1 is being added. What is the sign to the left of 1? Plus, so it can be written as what I just showed you. Okay, now notice that inside 3 minus x can be written as negative x plus 3, and then we can pull out the negative sign, and inside I get x minus 3. So this is going to be this. When you see something like this, it means flip over the y-axis is due to this one, negative, and then this is giving us the shift 3 to the right. Shift 3 to the right. If you go back here, so this is negative x plus 3. So if you remember, if you have x plus 3, that would mean shift 3 to the left. But here we have negative x plus 3. So either you think of it that if x plus 3 gives a shift to the left, then negative x plus 3 will be a shift to the right, 3 units. If you can understand it that way, it's okay. Otherwise, you have to go with, there are two ways to do it. Either you do it this way that I have shown, or you think of it that this you have to understand that when we have a plus sign with x in front of x, we have no sign, means a plus sign, then and we add a number, that will mean shift to the left, and if we subtract a number, that will mean shift to the right. So this is shift right, and this is left. But if we have a negative in front of the x plus 3, this will go right. And if I have negative x minus 3, that will go left. Because this can be written as negative of x plus 3. So this one is the flip over the y-axis, and this is shift to the left. So this is what we do when we have a negative in front of the x. To the left of x, we have a negative sign. We try to pull out the negative sign and try to see what we get. So is the number being added to x, or is it being subtracted from x? So this is what you have to kind of learn. Okay, so now let's look at all the transformations. So our function is g of x is equal to 1 minus square root of 3 minus x. So first will be the flip over the y-axis, so which is basically this portion. Then when we have the 3 there, then it means shift right 3 units, and I showed you why. Remember, we wrote it as 1 minus, actually we wrote it as negative of square root of negative x minus 3 plus 1. So this plus 1 we know is going to give us the, this we know that this plus 1 is going to give us go up 1 unit, and this negative sign over here, this is flip over x-axis. Okay. So first flip over, the first step that we have to do is flip over y-axis. Then the next step will be shift right 3 units. Next will be flip over x-axis. Then last will be shift up 1 unit. So let's see what graph we get. So this is how I just showed you. So this is my starting graph here, square root of x. And so if you draw them, please draw them like very with a light pencil, so that the final graph is visible, is clearly seen. So first graph from basic function square root of x, which is here. Then the first transformation we apply is the flip over the y-axis. So this is the flip over the y-axis. So I numbered it 1. Darken it. Okay. So this is number 1 is the flip over the y-axis. Number 2 will be the shift right 3 units. So that's what I have for number 2. Number 3 is flip over the x-axis, which is number 3 here. And the last one, number 4, will be up 1 unit. So this is our final graph. That is what we are getting with the green I did. Just shift everything up 1 unit. So now notice here, this graph is crossing the x-axis and the y-axis. So x-axis, the point where it will cross the x-axis is very clear, because if you keep track of those 3 points that I have mentioned before, 3 points to graph a function, the basic function. So it will be here 0 0 1 1 4 1 4 2, sorry, 4 2. So 0 0 1 1 4 2. So these are points that you get when you are graphing the square root function. So for the square root function, these 3 points. Now just as the graph moves, if you keep track of these 3 points, then you will notice that the beginning point, the 0 0 of the original graph, is now up here at 3 1, and the second point 1, which was 1 1, is now at 2 0. So this point kind of came over here, and then third point, which was 4 2, it went here. This will give you negative 1, negative 1, negative 1. So but if you cannot see why it is crossing negative 2, or if your graph doesn't cross x is equal to 2, so we can find the x-intercept. So x-intercept, how will you find it? Set y equal to 0. What was the y here? We had y equal to 1 minus square root of 3 minus x. This was our function. Set y is equal to 0. We get 0 is equal to 1 minus square root of 3 minus x. I can move the 1 over, or I can move the square root of 3 minus x to the left side. So I get square both sides, take square of both sides, we get 3 minus x is equal to 1. Subtract 3 from both sides, we get negative x equals negative 2, which gives us x is equal to 2. So it will cross the x-axis at x is equal to 2. What about the y-end? For the y-end, we set x is equal to 0, so that y will become 1 minus square root of 3. What is the value of square root of 3? This is something that you, if you can remember, good. If not, that you just leave it like this. So it is showing that we have to subtract square root of 3 from 1, which square root of 3 is a number which is bigger than 1, so we'll get a negative answer. So the actual value, the approximate value of square root of 3 is 1.7. In one digit, if you go to 2 digits, it will be 1.73. So it will give us basically negative 0.73. This will be your y-int. So if you notice, we come back, so this one is find the x-intercept. If you look at the y-intercept, it's a little below negative 1. So negative 1 is here, and the graph is passing through the x-axis a little below. So approximately what we see here, 0.73. So this is how you graph these functions. Now another way of doing it, graphing it, is, so here I drew all the in between graph, or starting from the basic function and then applying each transformation. So I drew on the same axis. You could do it on several axes or separate axes. So for example, you can start with, so this is the given the basic function, and now you flip, first was flip over the y-axis. So flip will give us this, remembering those 3 points, 0, 0, 1, 1, 4, 2. So what will those points will become what? So 0, 0 will stay 0, 0. This 1, 1, 1 will go to negative 1, 1, and the 4, 2 will go to negative 4, 2, and then you can graph function. Then in the next step, we have to shift right 3 units. So this is the shift right 3 units, and then I just made a little excuse, and I didn't draw another one for this, but it's okay. So this one was the flip over the y-axis and then shift right 3 units. The next one was flipping it over the x-axis. So this is the flip over the x-axis, and this is the function that it is. And the last thing was to raise it 1 unit up. So this is our final graph. Darken it a little bit. So this is the final graph. So what is the domain now? So you can see the domain is negative infinity to 3. Again, you can get it from the formula by setting 3 minus x greater than or equal to 0, and do your calculations and figure out what the limit on x is, or the interval in which x lies. Okay. The second thing was the range. So you can also see what the range is.